Greetings, friends. What it is? This is Brandon from Brandon's Bees. I'm going to share with you a little project I'm going to do that, well, I did it already. This is the template that the plans that I sketched up myself. I'm going to make a mallet, and instead of just a regular wooden mallet, I decided to make a mallet based on the hammer of Thor, Mjolnir, the mystical god of thunder. Thor has a magical hammer and it's gigantic, and I wanted to make one. So I decided I would use poplar. I wanted to use a hardwood, but I didn't want an expensive hardwood, and poplar was the cheapest that my hardwood dealer had. So I didn't want to buy a big block because I wanted to actually shape it. So I bought a plank, a 1-inch by 8-inch plank that's about 9 feet long, but I didn't use all of it. I'm going to laminate all these together to make a huge block that I will then shape into the head of Thor's hammer. The place where I buy my wood, actually, the lengths are fully measured out, so that's actually 1 inch by 8 inches, not the other way around. So here I'm using my drawing, and I'm going to make a template using some scrap plywood. It's about 8.5 inches long by about 6 inches wide, 5.5 so far, something like that, and it's all the same pieces. So here I am cutting out my template that I'm going to use on the bandsaw. I wanted a mallet, but you know, when I got done with it, I'll show you at the end of this video. It's huge. So instead of being there it is, that's my template. So instead of being actually useful as far as a tool, it's more decorative now, but it was fun to make. So I transferred the drawing from the template onto one of my sheets of poplar that I've cut out, and I think I made 8 of these. So after I put the template onto this sheet, this plank here, I was able to use it and the subsequent other ones as template there. So now you see how I did it. I trace it onto a plank, and there's my helper as well. I'd pay her top dollar to clean up my shop. She does a great job. So I have 1, 2, 3, there's 5 there. I believe I used 7 or 8 to get the final dimensions of the pieces I was going to laminate together. She's a good worker, and she's also interested, so I tolerate her presence. Here I am. So in order to insert the shaft into the hammer, I needed to cut one of my planks in half, and in fact it's about a 2-degree taper on that the cut. So I'm going to use a piece of cherry for the shaft of the hammer, and the shaft is about 1.5 inches wide. So at the bottom of my cut there, it's about 1.5, and then it tapers up at about a 2-degree cut. So it's in a wedge shape. So that one will be right in the middle, and the rest of them are glued on around it. This involved a lot of glue and a lot of sanding and a lot of other stuff. So there's the giant block. I'm going to use my clamps to apply copious amounts of pressure. There's always kids in my garage, mostly mine, which is fun. They like to be interested in what I'm doing. These are Harbor Freight clamps. So Harbor Freight's good for a lot of stuff, and clamps is one of them. I think I paid like $2 each for these. Those ones I inherited from my grandfather when he died, those orange ones. So once that was all dried up, as you can see, I'm using a taller fence that I made myself, and I'm cutting the angles into the hammer head. I don't know what the dimensions are on the angles. I don't even know if I put them on my plans. Probably not. I drew what the 45-degree angle was, and then adjusted the angle based on what Thor's hammer looks like. So you make 4 cuts on each end for the hammer faces, and this is the side. I'm just trimming up the edges. Making sure I wear my dust protection, my ear protection. I had to flip it over a few times because obviously my saw blade only raises about 3.5 inches. I'm just making minute adjustments. So I have my shaft here and I have the hammerhead. As you can see, I kind of cut it into a little bit of a tenon to fit into the smaller of the holes on the bottom. I'm testing the fit here. My assistant, always on the lookout. So you have to cut some slots in the end of the shaft that's going to stick out through the top, and then apply huge amounts of glue. Well, just enough, really. Hammer this in. This is at like 16x speed. This hammering this thing in took me like what seemed like 20 minutes. It was a very tight fit, but that's good. That's what you want. And it extends past the top of the hammerhead, so I had to put it on the side of my table saw / workbench and make sure I got it all the way through. You can see there it sticks out the top. Glue coming out. That's how you know if you have enough. So it sticks out the top there. And here's me admiring my work. It's starting to look like something, so I'm happy with myself. This is how you keep it in there. You make some wedges, pound it in. As you can see, my cameraman or camera girl is filming me. I didn't know she was following me here, but I get wrapped up in my work. So I'm cutting wedges here to fit into the slots I cut earlier. Oh, hello. And this is how you do it. You wedge them into the top. I think I use 4 to secure the head onto the shaft. And yep, 2 on each side, 2 in the middle. That's never coming off of there, ever. So once everything's dry, the next morning, the next day, I did a lot of sanding to get all the smooth, get the angles sharp and the surfaces level. With the bandsaw, I mean, it's not the bandsaw, but the table saw, they don't always match up perfectly. So the top and the bottom were difficult because that's where the hammer shaft is and the hammer handle. So I had to use my detail sander to get in there, make sure it was all smooth. Thor's hammer has a round top. I don't know exactly what it is, but it's kind of like a cap or something, I'm not sure. So I had to devise a way to come up with a round disc that attaches to the top of the hammer. So I used this kind of a, I don't know what you would call it, but essentially it's a hole in a stick nailed to a piece of wood. And I put a nail through the hole, and then you've got your circumference of the circle. You make a perfect circle there. So that's the same poplar wood, some of my cutoffs. I cut it in half. Actually, well, I cut the circle first, and then I'm going to cut it in half. I always do a rough cut first, and then I'll come back here and trim it to size, making sure it's smooth. I did some sanding on it as well. Sanded it here with the bandsaw. You run it through backwards, and it kind of takes some material off. Then I cut that in half. I probably should have cut it in half first, but there's the circle. And I sanded it. So once it's all dry, the hammer head, the handle and the shaft are still sticking to the top. So now I'm sanding it flush using my belt sander. And then I will affix the round circle on top. There it is. Starting to look like the hammer. Again, a lot of glue. Hold it on. Get it right to the edge. Make sure all the surfaces are covered. That's what I always try to do. And I affix it right in the middle. Now this hammerhead is so heavy, I didn't need to use clamps. I just let it secure itself. And that thing's never coming off either. Once again, my helper. I don't know what the child labor laws are for sons and daughters, but she gets paid. Don't worry, she doesn't do this out of the kindness of her heart. There's the boy. He's not as interested in this type of stuff as his sister is. He does his own thing. So I applied gray stain to it, but poplar grain is not very pronounced, and I didn't like the way the stain looked. So here I am sanding it off. And instead I'm going to use this spray paint, which is Krylon hammered finish. Kind of looks like metal, and it's a silver color. So I like the way that this came out better. Taping off the handle so it doesn't get paint on it. It's going to be covered here anyway, but I don't want paint going everywhere. So applying clean even strokes, making sure not to get runs or streaks, and spraying it in my garage with lots of ventilation. And you can see that it's shiny at first, then it kind of mats out as it dries. That's the way it looks. That's how let's left it to dry. So here we are. It's dried up. It's ready to go. Getting out my supplies, some other things. This thing, the end cap for the hammer handle, took forever. There's a lot of it took me 3 times to finally get it right. I believe this is my first attempt. Really here what I'm doing is just trying to, this is kind of a prototype, how I'm going to get it to fit. There's also a leather strap here that Thor's hammer has a strap on like a leather wrist strap thing that he uses to swing the hammer around, and I had to figure out a way to attach it to the handle and also secure it so it could still be used to support the weight of the hammer. So I'm going to glue it to the side of the hammer handle, run it up through this end cap. So I had to cut slots in there, glue the end cap down, and then run the leather strap through the other side and fix it to the handle. So it wasn't overly complicated, but you have to do it in the right order or else it's not going to work. And I think this might be my second attempt at this little cap thing to finish it off. Seems like the smallest pieces take the most work and the most tools. So this is how I made the little void in the middle of the end cap on the inside for the leather strap to run through. As I just marked out with the bandsaw, then made little tiny cuts and then kind of sanded away the material to remove what I needed to so I can make channels on the inside of this, and that's how I did it, like that. So I'm marking out on the side pieces where I'm going to glue the smaller pieces that hold together on the sides. This is me cutting the smaller pieces. This bandsaw is coming real handy. I'm glad I got one. It's small, it doesn't have a lot of power, but for this kind of work it's good. Again, more glue, gluing it together. More kids. Where are these kids coming from? They're just everywhere. I use a lot of pressure to keep it together. I don't want it coming apart. There it is. That's how it's going to work. And now it's going to have a cap. It's going to get painted. The leather strap goes through it. Comes around, goes back in. Removing the tape. Admiring what I've done. It's kind of my ode to Jimmy DiResta. He always does stuff like this. He would flip it and drop it on the table right now, but I liked it too much to do that. But he's kind of like my hero. So here's the the cap after I painted it to match the end of the hammerhead. I like the way it turned out. I rounded it off, sanded it, made it look good, in my opinion. So you put the strap through on one side. Now I got to get it to go through this side. I was having a little trouble here trying to figure out, get it back inside. This side was a little bit narrower than the first side. So I'm looking for my trusty tool, a handy switchblade. Always a good tool to help out with stabbing and persuasion. So I am able to get this. I'm going to glue the cap on to the hammer handle, making sure it's even. Trying to keep glue off the leather strap too. Now, wearing my Mr. Robot F Society t-shirt. So when I put it on there, the fit was a little too tight. It ended up splitting apart. So I just, fixed it with a little wood glue. Get it into the crevasse there and clamp it down, and that'll hold it. You'll never even know. Except I just told you so everybody knows. But well, there's always little mistakes, but really the woodworker's the only one who knows them. So to keep from marring the finish that took me so long, I'm using some scrap wood with my clamps. These orange clamps I got from my grandfather when he died. I have no idea where they're from, but they're like the best clamps I own. Excuse me. So here we are. I use this glue called tacky glue. My wife gave it to me. I guess it's like a craft glue, and it's great for gluing leather to wood. It's like cement, but it takes forever to dry. So that's it. I don't know where it's from or who makes it. She gave it to me. Of course, you gotta clamp stuff down. So here it is. I'm done. Now I'm gonna make the handle. What I'm gonna do is I'm gonna whip this leather lace, I guess it's called. And this is a technique that a lot of people use on tools like axe handles. They'll use twine and things like that. It's called whipping. So you make a loop at one end and then have a long end at the other end, and then you just wrap everything around. So I did this. This probably took me like 45 minutes. This is, I think, 16 speed. Excuse me. So just wrap it around, making sure it's tight. All the laces pushed up against each other. This is the inside of my house. My wife wanted me to make sure I let you know that it doesn't look like this. We're redoing our floors. You can see the cement's pulled up in the kitchen. We've got sheets on the lamps, Coke cans and whatever all over the place. So FYI, my house doesn't always look like this, and my wife wanted me to make sure everybody understands that. So I also put strips of leather on all four sides of this hammer handle to provide comfort and cushion underneath this leather leather lace, whatever it's called. So you just keep going around and around and around. As you get towards the end, I flipped it up on its end so I can make sure everything's tight. And as you get to the end, a little loop is left. You can see what I'm going to do with that. So the cord runs underneath itself, and just cut off about enough, to about the same length as the handle. You flip this, slip it through the loop, pull it through, and then now make sure it's tight. The other loose end that you left originally, you can pull on that, and it'll pull the excess up underneath the wrappings that you made. So you've essentially made two loops that are hooked through each other on the inside. And that'll never come out. If it does, you can repair it. So that's it. Trim off the excess. Make sure anything is hidden. That's it. Mjolnir is complete. I like it. I think it turned out good. So like I said, it weighs about 7 pounds. For a mallet, it's overkill. But for a woodworking project, that's a lot of fun. I enjoyed it. I don't know what I'm going to do with it now. It's just kind of probably going to be a paperweight or hang it on a plaque somewhere in my house. I have no idea, but it's fun. I put it on my car. I like the contrast. I like the white background. So I hope you enjoyed this video. Hope you learned something. I hope that you'll continue to watch these. If you like it, please subscribe. I appreciate you. If you have any suggestions, please feel free to leave them.